was a Tesla truck with an Amazon trailer.
This is to leapfrog them and do something beyond what Toyota has done. That was, I will tell you, that was my number one inspiration. If we could make some money doing it, that would be even nicer. But to me, it was the Volt was something like the Dodge Viper was at Chrysler, to give people a new perception of the company.
Thanks for joining us once again. This is Greg. We do periodic updates in terms of Bob Lutz and developments in the marketplace relative to his viewpoint on where Tesla and the auto market will go. Today's show uses the centerpiece of the ending of the Ford Lightning as a core starter of our conversation, and then we move forward to what we see coming forward. This is Greg for Teslafaninsight. Thanks once again for joining us. If this is your first time, welcome. If you're a repeat visitor, welcome back. We also want to thank our Patreon supporters. If you enjoy the show, like some better ideas on investing and trading, please join us on Patreon. So today's conversation does a revisit between, let's say, Bob Lutz and Ford. As you know, Bob actually worked at multiple companies over time, including BMW, GM, Ford, and Chrysler. So his influence has touched a lot of organizations and vice versa. Our conversation today focuses first on what's going on with the Ford Lightning, and then we follow on with a discussion of what the implications of that vehicle are for both the Lightning, Ford, and as we move into the semi-truck as well. So the first part of our conversation, as you know, is that the Ford Lightning was, how should I say, production was stopped in November of 2024 with an eye towards restarting production in February of 2025, which is around now. The newest piece of information we got was the fact that instead of restarting production as planned and then moving on to the future models, the current plan by Ford is to cease production by the June timeframe of this year for the Lightning. So this, I think, is pretty fascinating. The main reason is that obviously the Tesla Cybertruck is actually outselling the Ford Lightning 4 or 5 to 1 at least. But the other problem they're having with the Lightning is they're just sitting on dealer lots unsold. Now, the reason I started this show with our clip of Bob Lutz articulating that Tesla has no advantages over competitors is that there seems to be a disconnect between what the manufacturers perceive as an advantage or disadvantage and what the consumers seem to have as a viewpoint of advantage or disadvantage. In particular, we have to go back to first principles of physics that Elon talked about, and the fact that there's this nightmare going on right now, which is there are these people called very wealthy consumers. And when you're paying above 50 grand, heading for 250 in some cases for an electric vehicle, there's a certain level of sort of response to needs that are expected. And yes, Cadillac is still selling. Yes, there's a nice pickup or two coming out of GM in that space. But the challenge that's going on right now is that Lutz talked about the fact repeatedly that Tesla had no advantages. But we could, if you could argue, say that yes, having no range anxiety because you can charge at home, not charge at home, get fast charging when you're leaving, all those options start to look a lot like the options you have with an ICE vehicle. Many locations you can go to get it done. Obviously, you can't charge an ICE vehicle at home, but in general, my drift is towards the idea that yes, indeed, there's a reason why consumers are rolling in Tesla's direction relative to its competitive advantage. The other competitive advantage that I'm seeing is Bob often referenced the fact that really what people wanted to drive were the ICE vehicles, and they were only driving electric vehicles, I want to say for the fun of it, which is kind of the deal because they are very fast, but they weren't necessarily, the top choice of consumers, which I believe is actually shifting. And where I see a problem going on here is number of moving parts. So as you know, Teslas have 17 moving parts, whereas ICE vehicles have over 2,000. So each of those moving parts, in the case of Tesla, they're 90% plus vertically integrated. So all those parts need a slight markup by all of the manufacturers of those parts. And so, number one, when you in-house at your 90% vertically integrated and you're producing them, your markup per part is limited relative to outside vendors. Whereas in the case of let's say GM, they only produce 25% of their parts in-house. So the markup on all the parts coming in from vendors starts to affect, what their end price is going to be. So I'm bringing this up today because there's this thing called the brutality of electricity. Among the very brutal elements is the fact that not only does Tesla have low number of moving parts, but the other manufacturers do as well. So this is creating, I believe, a competitive threat that becomes decimating or devastating to all of the ICE manufacturers globally, not necessarily because it's a Tesla, but because it's the process of how electric delivers cars. So what this then means is not only are you wiping out jobs as the large makes lose market share, but you also wipe out jobs in terms of those 2,000 parts and all the parts manufacturers servicing, let's say, the large OEMs. So I kind of bring this up today because I believe that we're in for a crazy time coming up. In particular, what's happening is that Bob had articulated that the arrival of large numbers of vehicles from the large OEMs, let's call it VW being the largest, but also from Ford and GM, etc. What's starting to happen is that we're ending up in the zone where the consumers are saying BMW, it could be Mercedes, it could be Ford. They're saying that, yes, we have a brand relationship with you over time, but when it comes to electric vehicles, Tesla has a better solution for us, and therefore we're not going to buy the vehicle you're offering if we can just go get a Tesla, which offers a better, I want to call it total TQO, total quality of ownership. So where does this leave us? Well, I'm really thinking about sort of the Apple, when you look at Apple, when you look at Samsung relative to the Android phones, etc. What we saw happen there is how consumers have tended to identify who has the best package of features. And then, yes, there are competitors, yes, there are other products. But all of a sudden, you start to see this narrowing of the number of folks that can stick around simply because there isn't enough that the new competitors offer that's superior what they can in general get from one or two or maybe three companies. One of the things that's amazing for me to watch right now is watching what's going on with Stellantis Chrysler unit. Yes, they've turned it into sort of the performance house, but all kinds of problems have popped up with that vehicle. Obviously, it's still a nice vehicle, but insurance on that thing is $500 a month to go with the payment that you have to make on it as well. And then the biggest reason why you would go for those big block, powerful V8s that they offer is performance. How fast will it go? And we know that 0 to 80 is where you get to use the power the most, because there are too many vehicles out there to enjoy the 100, 150 miles an hour capabilities that those cars have. And when it comes to sort of 0 to 80 time, they're completely dominated by Teslas. So I believe we're entering the zone now where you could argue that it's a competitive advantage for Tesla, but I actually think it's a competitive advantage for electric vehicles. And because Tesla has such a large market presence, and because consumers are finding it easier to work with Tesla, particularly when it comes to charging, but other features as well in terms of the network effect of having neighbors who own those vehicles, etc. I just think this means that, yes, Chrysler goes under, and I believe Ford is probably heading into that direction as well, just because there's been a decision made by the larger OEMs that they don't want to spend the money to sort of give consumers a head-to-head option that to what Tesla's doing. So it's nice that you can go charge your Ford at a Tesla facility, but while those individuals are standing at a Tesla facility, it's almost an advertising campaign as to why bother screwing around with others when I actually know where the Tesla charging facilities are, and I can go there and get well served without any of the headaches relative to electric vehicles that I have to deal with when I'm dealing with a Ford in this case, but it could be any OEM. So perhaps the final note, and you guys have already seen this a great deal, is that several of the manufacturers, in particular GM, have postponed the introduction of their batteries. They canceled their Itanium product and have moved on to new battery compositions being done by their Korean partners. But it further articulates the point that as an end-to-end solution, Tesla is just a better solution. And the question mark is, what does the future hold? And I believe what the future holds is more Teslas being sold and less ICE and competing sort of OEM electric vehicles over time. So we very much look forward to your comments on this. Please take time to like and subscribe. Just a reminder of our health tips for today. It's almost Valentine's Day. Don't forget, prior to lovemaking, no more than a salad allows the focus to be away from your stomach and onto other extremities. Also wanted to encourage you to consider 25 leg lifts a day to strengthen the quad muscles, reducing potential for knee issues. And we also wanted to encourage you to, consider 2 weeks going to bed and waking up at the same time every day to develop a healthy circadian rhythm that will enhance your overall restfulness. Once again, thanks for joining us. Tschüss, au revoir, lehit road, hoda hafez, drajite ni hama. In Jamaica, we say enough respect, walk good man. Thanks for joining us. Have a great day, and bye for now.
As well as to kill off pathogens, right? I'm talking about bacteria, fungus, parasites that could be in your food. Okay, it's kind of a natural barrier, your immune barrier. And so as we age, we lose this stomach acid. People that are taking antacids are putting their pH in their stomach in the wrong direction, because the actual cause of heartburn, GERD, and acid reflux, most of the time, is this: your stomach acids are not strong enough, and that valve at the top of the stomach is not closing, so you're regurgitating acid. The pH in your stomach should be between 1 and 3, very, very acidic. And